Oh, is it on? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the VSGI speaker series. And today we have Karen Mendoza, who is the head of global sales at D-Box Technologies. D-Box creates realistic experiences by harnessing movement and just kind of getting into your imagination and into your head. They partner with cinema, video games, virtual reality applications, entertainment, and professional simulation to kind of create this feeling of presence. And so I wanted to turn it over to her. She's doing a presentation today on diversity and representation in gaming, which is a topic that's very near to my heart, and I hope to everybody else's. So go ahead, Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thanks for co-hosting with me or having me here. This topic is very relevant in today's world, to today's society. And as Stephanie mentioned in her great introduction, I am currently the VP of Global Sales and Partnerships at D-Box. I know that BGSI, you featured one of my colleagues, our CTO, Robert DeSautel, I think it was last month, October, and he talked about sort of the technical aspects of how we do our haptic designing and haptic programming for all different types of sectors. We are in theatrical or movie theaters and cinema. Wakanda Forever coming out this weekend. Watch it in D-Box. Got to plug that in, shameless plug. We are getting into gaming. In fact, we will be doing a major announcement at CES this coming January to demo and start pre-orders of this haptic chair that you see on the screen. But even before D-Box, because I've been at D-Box Technologies for almost a year, I want to walk you through a little bit of my journey and to kind of level set kind of how I got to D-Box and where I am today, or how I got here, and of course where I am today. So I'm going to start with my childhood memories. Okay, my family and I immigrated from the Philippines. We migrated to the U.S. in the 80s, 1982 to be exact. And I remember it vividly because one of the very first toys I've ever asked my parents for when I was 6 years old was this Game & Watch, manufactured and made by Nintendo. Some of you may know about this product, but they re-released this as a kind of vintage or a kind of a retro product, and I collected everything related to this product, but I loved it. And if you think about the sort of what was happening globally in the 80s, there was definitely a nice sort of collaboration between US and Japan at that time in the 80s, and with Toyota and the automotive industry, but definitely the electronics industry. And so I was surrounded when I got to America, definitely surrounded by a lot of the technological advancements with the Sony Walkman, all the TV innovations, and of course the gaming innovations in the 80s. Next decade, I had the privilege and pleasure and honor to be fortunate enough to grow up in the American public university system, public schools, all my career, and even my college experience was at UCLA, go Bruins, West Coast here. But while I was at UCLA, I was an intern for 20th Century Fox, the major network that is now, that was acquired by Disney. So all my Fox friends are now sort of Fox and Disney as well. But at 20th Century Fox, I got to be a PR intern, PR specialist, and then PR manager for their gaming division. And they're no longer, that was a little bit of a incubator project for 20th Century Fox in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was called Fox Interactive and Fox Sports Interactive. So we worked on titles like Die Hard Trilogy for the PC and PlayStation. We worked on Aliens versus Predator, which was a great game. I think there's still a huge fandom around that. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Simpsons Wrestling, which is a very casual game. Back in the 90s, the whole crazy taxi sort of trend was happening, and so Simpsons Wrestling and Simpsons. There was another World's Scariest Police Chases from Fox was also happening at this time. So next decade here. So in 2001, so Fox Interactive and Fox Sports Interactive, they dissolved those units, and so therefore the team that was working on the video game division of Fox were laid off. Moment of truth for any young professional up and coming in their career, right? And I was devastated, of course, because I loved working in that gaming industry, in that entertainment industry. And so what I did, I knew in 2001 that either Microsoft was launching their next their first console platform, which was the original Xbox. That was in 2001. And also I knew that Nintendo was going to launch their successor to the N64, which in 2001 for Nintendo, it was a Nintendo GameCube, right? The little purple box. And so what I did as a young and a bit ignorant and young professional who was wanting and had this desire to stay and remain in the video game industry, I packed up my little Honda Civic hatchback with everything I owned in Los Angeles, and I drove up to Seattle, Washington, to either get a job at Microsoft or Nintendo. Fast forward, got an entry-level position at Nintendo and worked my way up from there. I eventually worked at Nintendo for 15 years, so a decade and a half. A very, very great company, still love them, still consume everything that they put out. I still watch all the Nintendo Directs. Great company, family brand, and family culture at Nintendo. It was great. During my time at Nintendo, also was blessed to get married and have 2 kids. I married my high school sweetheart. And I also, towards the tail end of my Nintendo kind of tenure, I took the opportunity to use the tuition reimbursement program that Nintendo has, and I got my MBA through Pepperdine University. So that catapulted me to wanting to really scratch this entrepreneurial itch that I had, and so I joined in 2019. I joined a company, smaller than Nintendo, of course, but a partner of Nintendo. It's called Game Truck. Game Truck is a franchise-based business headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got to be their chief of business development there. And so this was probably the toughest and most challenging job I ever had, because I went from a 1,000 employee company in Nintendo. Nintendo of America has about 1,000 to 1,200 people, down to 10 people in the height of the pandemic at Game Truck, right? And everything we were doing to try to survive as an organization, to try to survive as a company, was the most challenging during, of course, those pandemic times. But we did it, and we did it because we got to, and overused word, but I'm going to use it anyway, pivot, right? A business pivot, and strategically expand our Game Truck offerings to include esports, right? And that was, while it was the toughest, most challenging sort of part of my professional life and career so far, it was the most exhilarating, because we did prove that, you know, Game Truck could survive, and we proved it with esports. We launched a company called Bravest Esports, and we were able to entertain and engage a bunch of university and college students who, during the pandemic, were forced off campuses and out of their dorms. And so we hosted a bunch of college esports tournaments and events. It was fantastic. In 2022, just this year, January, I was recruited by D-Box, again, a haptic-based and fully immersive-based technology company in Montreal, Canada. And they're a publicly traded firm. And so, you know, we are doing some amazing things, and I love it there because I get to take everything I knew or everything I experienced and learned from my 20th Century Fox days of filmed entertainment, home entertainment, all the way to my, of course, Nintendo Foundation, which is everything we're trying to do with gaming at D-Box. And then everything for experiential marketing and fan engagement that we did at Game Truck. So it's an exciting time, and it's definitely the convergence of everything in consumer entertainment technology that I love about D-Box. So that was my journey. Now let's talk about this big topic of diversity and representation. And I would say not just in gaming, but also, of course, gaming and esports and entertainment in general. There is such a convergence right now, and it's not right now, but it's been accumulating over time, the convergence of arts, entertainment, and of course, technology. And, you know, I always like to think as when I'm sitting around a boardroom or strategic business meetings, when they talk about ROI, return on investment, I look around the table and I look at our marketing plans, our business plans, to make sure that there's also a return on inclusion. Are we really marketing to the masses? Are we really marketing to those who are, you know, who we're trying to reach? Also VR, that word, you know, virtual reality, AR, XR, all of these words I use every day in all of my business talks. But for me, VR, you know, I'm looking at voices being represented, right? And I'm very cognizant of, again, looking around the room virtually or physically, physical rooms, physical spaces, to see, you know, who's there, and making sure that we're hearing and we're listening and we're seeing all voices being represented. Web3, I'm sure at VGSI, you guys are talking a lot about Web3 and the implications to game development and entertainment consumption. And the simplest, I'm not a technologist by trade, I'm more of a sales and marketer by trade, but my simplest understanding of Web3 is that it has evolved to not just reading information that you've received from the internet, not just writing or sharing out our thoughts about what we just read on the internet, but it's now owning the message, owning the digital asset, owning whatever art or craft that we're trying to put out there in the world. So it's the authorship of everything. And because of this Web3 wave that is, upon us now, all the more reason that all voices must be heard, that all, faces must be seen. And then, of course, the global versus local, the ability to reach audiences, globally and massively with just the simplest technologies we have at our fingertips, like the smartphones and laptops and mobile devices. But I think also the importance of still connecting at a human level, locally, one-on-one, and engaging and really trying to empathize with the person we're talking to. So these are all the reasons why this matters. It matters in business, it matters in personal life, it matters in our society. And of course, it's big business in the gaming industry. So a little bit about that gaming industry. The next couple of slides are I'm going to hit you with some factoids and fact checks here. This one, next two slides here are from the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, specifically speaking about the US gaming population, 227 million players across the ages, across the US, sorry. And average gaming age of US players, 31 years old. But 80% of the players are over 18. And what's interesting is 77% voted in the 2020 election. Now, yesterday in America, we just had another midterm election. I don't really follow the results, and I'm not going to talk about the political rant here, but that is showing, this chart is showing just how, again, that reach of the gaming population, I think, is they're probably the early adopters, they're digital natives, they are engaged in society. And so all the more reason that that we have to make sure that we are being responsible and showcasing the diversity of the society that we live in America, which is very diverse for sure. This slide, again, ESA, showing that you know, this green bar, 73% are white or Caucasian, and then we have these other minorities that are now starting to show up. And what's encouraging is that the smaller bars of the different ethnicities and nationalities, I do see them increasing over time. And of course, this is encouraging. Of course, this is moving in the right direction, I'll say. But we still have more work to do, right? And so I think definitely the changing fabric of our society, we of course have to keep that in mind as we are either creating products or creating experiences that reflect the true nature of the reality of our society. Here's a slide from Newzoo. Newzoo is a great think tank on all things sort of consumer technology, and they have specifically some great slides dedicated to the gaming industry. This one is a little bit more global in context, global in that they are showing data from the UK. But overall, this is showing that there is support and desire in both countries, US and in the UK, in both territories or regions, that they want or that they believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. And this acknowledgement, I mean, it's the first step to kind of tipping into more critical mass of the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in organizations and in society. So here's a real sort of situation that I'm sure some of you in the audience and listeners to the show will probably can probably empathize or sympathize with, in that 1 in 3 gamers do not feel comfortable or safe, welcome in gaming communities. And especially as you see me as female and a minority, and not that I'm a hardcore gamer and I'm always in these spaces on Twitch and Discord and all of those, but I know that you know, there are headlines out there of still the toxicity of female gamers and women and girls and women gaming, where this community of gamers is such the big fandom that they have may not be so welcoming to that to those type of different viewpoints or different audiences. It's very similar, same parallel path as sports, both traditional sports, right? And I work in my current role at D-Box. I get to network in spaces like the F1, like NASCAR, like motorsports and the automotive industry, and it's very, very true there as well. F1, you know, just the latest headlines there, in that they had the W series, the women led series for F1 motorsports and racing, and they had to cut their season short because of lack of funding for that series. And that, to me, it's very, very disappointing. I get it though, in in the world of business and in the world of financial transactions and sponsorships and big business and big money. But this is why I'm so passionate about, making sure we have a voice and we show the return on inclusion on the dollars spent, because there's a whole half of the population that are watching, those motorsports, those esports. I've spent 5.5 hours on YouTube the other night watching the League of Legends World Championships, because it took place here in the Chase Center in my hometown of San Francisco. So there are some real implications here of the welcoming and the embracing other viewpoints and the minority and female perspectives here. That was specifically AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander community, which I am a proud member of by birth. Yeah, so one of the trends in my AAPI community is that we like to stay anonymous in gaming communities, and especially with a lot of the global geopolitical during the pandemic, and some of the Stop Asian Hate campaigns that we had to go through as a human species, and especially in certain cities here in the US, yeah, that impacted me directly, and impacted of course my family, my loved ones, my friends, and what's encouraging, I mean, I don't mean for this topic to be a downer, but what is encouraging is I do see the progress, or the other sort of minority voices who are using their platform in film, in entertainment, in gaming, in if they're a technology company like Twitch or well, maybe not Twitter, they're in transition right now, but on platforms, social media platforms, where they are kind of amplifying voices of the underrepresented. And so while this is while I'm kind of sharing with you some disappointing slides, I'm still very, very encouraged, and the future is promising for these bar charts to increase in some of these lower represented areas. Now, this slide is really talking a little bit about what gamers are asking for, what's most important for them on certain issues, and health and well-being. What's very interesting to me is this big signal. I remember pre-pandemic, before the pandemic, there was a whole sort of advocacy campaign and a lobbying in Washington, D.C. for to make the gaming industry a mental disorder, or an addictive disorder, not a mental disorder, sorry, an addictive disorder. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, even commented on this during the pandemic. They shifted their positioning. They shifted their positioning because the only way that we could connect as human beings during the pandemic, when everything was on lockdown, was through gaming, through through watch parties on Netflix, and we couldn't even be together. But these, so that was a huge signal to me personally, where politicians, lawmakers were kind of so against video games pre-pandemic, and then a whole shift when we saw that actually gamers and non-gamers, casual gamers alike, families were getting together to play games, to play video games together. Mario Kart, Animal Crossing, from my friends at Nintendo, that launched during the pandemic, and it was amazing. Fall Guys, right? That was another big casual gamer hit. Among Us, we did a lot of Among Us events in university colleges. So the health and well-being issues are definitely, a prime focus for some of these gaming communities, for sure. Now, let's talk about the people making video games. And I'm so glad to see and proud to see Stephanie Kane, who is one of these, makers of video games and the developers of games, and love to see her story as well. But clearly, again, the bar charts are a bit off the charts, and it's not a level playing field still, unfortunately. This source is from the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, and you can see that nearly 75% are still male. You can see this orange bar, and the female bar is we got to get that to a more level playing field. In terms of the ethnicities, again, the white Caucasian European is still skewing very, very high, but you see all of these other ethnicities and minorities starting to kind of inch their way to a broader representation. And then from even a sexual orientation standpoint, bisexual, this gray bar starting to increase. And of course, as now, I think as a society, we are definitely becoming more and more open, more and more receptive, more and more welcoming of all of these other underrepresented communities. But again, these are the charts that I always like to kind of circle back on an annual basis or a couple of years, just to see, have we made an improvement? And of course, from my standpoint, I always try to reflect on what can I do as a member of this underrepresented community to help increase those bars that are such a minority, right? And I'm showcasing here a couple of, I see great examples of companies and brands and influencers and celebrities that are I think doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing. Twitch back in May celebrated the AAPI month on Twitch, and where they featured all of their streamers who identify as AAPI. I think that's great, and we all know that every month there's something to celebrate. Black History Month, Asian Pacific History Month, Women's History Month. I mean, I love to see all of those campaigns, and where we can shine a light, highlight them, spotlight them, amplify their stories, their voices, all the better. Here, another Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. They featured 2 female leads there. That's always a good sign. Even, far back as Tomb Raider, Lara Croft, and I think we've got 2 female, 2 really high-powered celebrities who Angelina Jolie being the original Lara Croft in the movies, and then forget the name of the other one, but she's also very, very popular. And then the last example here, Pokimane, about using their platform to kind of, again, shine a light on, hey society, we can be better. You don't have to get mad about, the women being in gaming. So a subtle shade to those out there who are still kind of uncomfortable with the minorities and the underrepresented taking some of the percentage share out of their bars and putting it in the others. So my last couple of slides here, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, I hope, if there's any questions in the audience. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the culturalization, I can't even say that word, localization, I'll say localization of the game development process. And like I said at the top of the hour, I think I'm not a technologist, I'm not a game developer, but I have been around circles of game developers who have shared this slide with me, and I want to share it with you because, and this is taken from my time at Nintendo and the things that we look at, or they look at, when they are evaluating how to bring their product, such as let's use Super Mario Odyssey, right? I was there for 2017 for that launch. And of course, the very first thing that they talk about is what languages do we want to translate this game in, right? And where will we market this in? And, French, there's two types of French, and maybe even more than two, but there's French from France and French from Canada, Quebecois. Portuguese, there's Portuguese from Portugal and Brazilian Portuguese. So there's all of those nuances and dialect and accents in the voiceovers and even in the packaging or the written word. Of course, the ESRB ratings, we have to make sure that it is acceptable from an ESRB and ratings perspective in all countries that we're in. We have to take a look at the not just the gun policies or the violence policies in different parts of the world that we're marketing a game to. Holidays and cultural traditions, rituals, if any of our the games or the content that we're creating, is it true to that religious holiday, religious belief, religious rituals? The metric system versus the imperial system, right? These are all things that we have to keep in mind when we're either developing a game or marketing a game. Again, female empowerment, if our game consists of something, a messaging or a storyline that has this type of more politically slanted, overtones, how does that play in different parts of the world? Of course, LGBTQ community, and are we having the right voices, not just voiceover actors and whatnot, but do we have the right way to really represent that on screen or in gameplay? Gambling, betting, it's starting to become even more prevalent, especially in the esports side of the business of gaming. And so and this topic on sort of gambling, gaming, loot boxes was in the headlines a couple of years ago, because that was the industry think tanks were kind of leaning more towards loot boxes in the random chance that there was some type of betting element or gambling element in that. So these are trends that we just have to monitor and see. Again, empowerment messages, Wakanda Forever coming out this weekend, and just, are we inspiring the right in the right way? Are these messages going to resonate with the right audiences? Of course, again, parental advisory and how are we treating certain types of communities in our games or in the content or in the product that we're bringing to the market. And then, like I said, this was all taken because when Nintendo was developing Super Mario Odyssey, and when we created this fictional place called New Donk City, which was based on New York City, all of these elements of what we have, factors of how we culturalize or localize certain storylines or even packaging matters there. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Again, I encourage you to check out our D-Box gaming chair coming soon to an e-commerce or online store near you, probably. And Stephanie, I'll let you moderate and let me know if there's anything you want to add or share.
Great. Well, I don't know, does anybody else have any questions, Riza or Dorian?
I didn't see anything in the chat, Stephanie, so
Okay.
you may go ahead.
All right. So I just wanted to, like I said, this is a topic that's very near and dear to me. I always try. And I want to say, like, when we look at the gaming population, the actual gamers themselves, we see that it's actually pretty reflective of the population in general as far as diversity goes. So I was curious, why do you think inclusion is so difficult? Because it's not necessarily the diversity, it's the inclusion of them in the industry. And we know that, there's only 2% of devs that are Black, there's only 4% that are Latino. And so why is it, and that's not reflective of the people who play the games. And so I was wondering, how can we rectify that?
hiring practices, recruitment practices, and more than just recruiting them to be part of the team, invite them to the discussion table. Really, you know, and I'm this is personal experience from me, where I may be the only female in a room full of, you know, board members who are male, and I have to always try to contribute at least something, let my voice be heard. Or I've seen, you know, where I've seen great practices or best practices is when the facilitator of those business meetings, they specifically call me out. They in a very positive way to say, Karen, what are your thoughts on this? And as leaders of in whatever community or whatever gathering we're in, you know, truly being curious about hearing the perspective of that minority, of that perspective of the underrepresented, right? Or if you are that underrepresented, include yourself, make sure you're heard, make sure you're seen, make sure you sit, you know, in a place where you're not gonna be ignored or seen. So these are some proactive things I think that companies can do. And I think that us individuals can really leave an impression in every setting we're in.
That's great. Thank you. And so, you know, we're all educators. This is we're educators for a bachelor's degree for the university. And we try to reach out to younger K through 12 students. And I was curious, do you have any recommendations how we encourage this diversity for our future devs? How can we kind of, because they're the ones that are going to be at the table hiring, not me, I'm teaching. So how do we get those people to kind of think about those things when they're in the business?
Well, you know, I think there's a couple of proactive things that educators educators can do, university and K through 12 institutions can do. STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math.
Mm-hmm.
It is predominantly and historically been a male-dominated kind of program, but I am loving what I'm seeing in the girls in STEM, and really putting more dollars towards marketing to those organizations that cater to women and girls in these male-dominated industries, non-traditional industries for women. So, and I love what Google or Alphabet or whatever that, you know, what they're doing in here, where they do have specific programs related to girls and gaming, or even minorities in STEM. There's a lot of organizations out there that nonprofit, they're getting government funding to be able to encourage the STEM in K through 12, or even post-secondary education in colleges and universities. So seek them out. And sometimes, you know, yes, education, I'm all for it, love it, want to support it. But where I think the masses or critical mass can be seen is leisure activities and entertainment, where some of, you know, and they have to see it to really believe that they can, you know, be it, and be an educator like you, Stephanie, and be a game developer like you, or be, you know, kind of an executive in a technology company like me. And there's so many different job opportunities and roles. Like I said, I don't program, I don't code, but yet I'm proud of the career opportunities that I've had, that I get to kind of sit alongside these brilliant engineers who then create these games and these products that then I can go market, and I can go evangelize and sell to those who want it. So sorry for the long answer, Stephanie.
No, you're fine. I guess, the last thing is, you said that you're an executive, and that's so amazing to see a woman of color being an executive in a very technologically, present company. I wanted to ask, for all of us who are in the tech industry, who might be kind of curious, like, I guess maybe what's your advice for those of us in the tech industry? Because when you look around, it can be very disheartening. It can be very
Yeah.
disheartening to look around and see, out of the top 40 CEOs, 35 are white and 38 are men. Like, it's hard. And so how can you, what, I guess, advice do you have for us?
Yes, it is difficult. And it goes back a little bit. I'm going to tie it back to your question about inclusion. And I think it's related to my response to that question about being seen and contributing something, making a good first impression, letting your voice be heard, and some actions that I think I would advise is just be in those spaces, be in those places where they are. If you're more introverted, like I thought I was, and I was in my younger self, was more introverted and shy and didn't really know how to talk tech speak, but yet I was there. I was in the same room there. And sometimes when they know that, okay, she doesn't know anything about C++ or Java or whatever tech speak, but yet, be a conversationalist about a topic that's relevant to that space you're in, and because there's so many different aspects. So I think being heard, and in this day and age, I mean, it is about personal branding and Web3, right? When we talk about ownership and authorship of our personal stories, of our personal message, or whatever our personal projects that we're passionate about, maybe make your brand, or make your personal brand be something about what you believe in. And I think aligning yourself, yes, being in the spaces, but aligning with other faces, other voices, to bring you or invite you to those networking opportunities, to those both virtual and physical meetings, that where you are going to get exposure to being heard. So part of it is like, where do you want, like asking yourself, where do you want to exist, and where do you want to thrive in terms of, and I'm thinking more along the lines of professional circles, right? Where do you want to be associated with in terms of a professional circle, and be there and contribute something, and make an impression, and connect and network. That networking, there's a data and a stat on that women do not network nearly as much as men. And that is so sad, because it's the easiest thing to do. Sometimes, I mean, it is intimidating to kind of step into a room full of guys, and they look at you and you're like, whoa, what are you doing here? You're in the wrong room. But you know what? I have something to say too. And,
It's just as important.
Yeah, just as important. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that's all I had. And I just wanted to thank you again so much for coming and for presenting this. I think that this is going to be a really great subject for, I hope everybody watches it. We'll post this later this week on our website, so you can see it there and share it amongst everyone there. But I just wanted to extend a thank you from the VSGI in total, and from James and myself personally as well. So thank you so much for coming, and it was really great to listen to you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for having me, Riza and Stephanie. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.